The damp air in Padre Pio's crypt clung to Dr. Luca Rossi's skin, a chill that whispered secrets no science could unravel. March 2nd, 2008, San Giovanni Rotondo. Pilgrims flocked to a town where rosaries clicked like soft heartbeats, their prayers rising for a saint whose wounds bled like Christ's for 50 years. Luca, a skeptic scarred by his wife's death, stood among scientists, their lamps casting ghosts on stone walls. The Vatican had granted them access to exhume Padre Pio's body, expecting decay after 40 years since his death in 1968. As the coffin creaked open, silence fell. His face was serene, skin soft, untouched by time. No embalming, no preservatives, no answers. Could a saint's faith defy the grave that Luca swore to explain? Luca's hand trembled, his clipboard a frail shield against the impossible. At 45, he was a forensic pathologist from Rome, a man who lived by cells, compounds, and measurable truths. Miracles were myths for the desperate. The Vatican's request was a chance to debunk a legend tied to Padre Pio's 2002 canonization. But this body mocked his certainty, its stillness a challenge. "This can't be," he muttered, his voice swallowed by the hum of portable lamps. Dr. Bianchi, a biochemist with a nervous tic, leaned close. 40 years, Luca. There should be dust. Luca's eyes traced the saint's scarred hands, Stigmata's silent marks, and felt the crypt's weight press against his chest. Born Francesco Forgione in 1887 in rural Pietrelcina, Padre Pio became a Capuchin friar whose life burned with mystery. In 1918, at 31, wounds appeared, hands, feet, side, bleeding daily, a pain he bore with prayer, never seeking relief. "Pray, hope, and don't worry," he'd said, his voice steady through 12-hour confessions, guiding sinners with compassion that outshone his suffering. Luca had read the reports. Real blood, no infection, whispers of miracles, healings, even by location, the claim he could be in two places at once. He'd scoffed, picturing a charismatic monk weaving tales for the gullible. But this body, serene in its wooden coffin, was no tale. In the lamplight, Padre Pio's face seemed to watch him, and Luca's mind flashed to Elena, his wife, 5 years gone to cancer. In her final days, her rosary gleamed as she prayed, her frail hand clutching it while Luca, ever the skeptic, dismissed her faith as futile hope. "Let go," she'd whispered as her breath faded, but he'd buried his faith with her, anger at a silent God his only companion. He shook his head, forcing focus. "There's an explanation," he said, signaling his team. X-rays whirred, tissue samples clicked into vials, environmental scans hummed. The readouts were maddening. No preservatives, no bacterial anomalies, no decay. Luca scribbled notes, his pen racing. "Humidity's normal," he murmured. Bianchi shook his head. "This shouldn't be possible, Luca. Nothing explains it." Luca's jaw tightened. "There's always an answer." But the words felt hollow, like a formula failing its proof. The team worked for hours, their sterile precision clashing with the pilgrims' chants filtering from the church above. Luca stepped back, sweat beading despite the crypt's chill. For a moment, Padre Pio's face seemed to shift, eyes closed yet piercing, as if seeing through Luca's doubt. He blinked, shaking off the illusion. "Focus," he told himself. He was here for science, not ghosts. Hours later, the team packed their gear, leaving the crypt to the friar's care. Luca emerged into the night, the air thick with olive trees and incense, the town's cobblestones slick under a light rain. Pilgrims huddled under umbrellas, their faces alight with a hope Luca couldn't grasp. He checked into a small inn, its walls lined with faded photos of Padre Pio, bandaged hands, piercing eyes, a faint smile. Luca ignored them, retreating to his room with a glass of wine, his notes spread before him. The data was clear. No chemicals, no reason for preservation. "There's always an answer," he whispered, but the words tasted like doubt. A call from the Vatican came at dawn. Further tests were needed, delaying his return to Rome. Luca cursed, his car idling outside a bakery where the scent of fresh bread mingled with damp air. A voice broke through the mist. "Luca, you look lost." An elderly woman stood under an awning, her face lined but warm, a silver cross glinting at her neck. "I'm fine," he said curtly, but her smile was insistent. "Come, my son can help. And you need coffee." Her kindness disarmed him, and he followed, escaping the rain. Maria Esposito's home pulsed with warmth, a wood stove crackling, candles casting soft glows on relics. A medal, a framed prayer, a cloth stained with Padre Pio's Stigmata blood, a family heirloom from a pilgrimage decades ago. Maria poured espresso, her black shawl draped like a mantle. Her son, Antonio, a broad-shouldered mechanic in his 40s, wiped grease from his hands. "Vatican's keeping you here, eh?" he said, his tone gruff but curious. "I stopped praying when my brother died, but Mo's faith keeps me grounded." Luca noted the shadow in Antonio's eyes, a mirror to his own loss. Sophia, Antonio's 16-year-old daughter, peeked from the kitchen, her dark curls bouncing, eyes sharp with curiosity. "You're the scientist poking at Padre Pio's body," she said, grinning. "Good luck explaining him." Luca stiffened. "It's an examination, not poking." Maria sat, her gaze steady. "Padre Pio was our light, Luca. My father, lungs failing, had no hope. We prayed to him, and he recovered, body and soul. He taught us that suffering is a gift to God." Luca sipped his coffee, hiding his skepticism. "Medicine saves lives, not prayers." Maria touched her cross, her fingers steady. "You'll see, Luca. He changes people." Sophia leaned in, bold. "So, why hasn't his body rotted?" Luca's fork paused, Elena's rosary flashing in his mind, her faith he'd dismissed. "I'm analyzing the data," he said, his voice tight. Sophia's grin widened. "What if you can't explain it? What then?" The question cut deep, a thorn in his certainty. Maria's voice was soft, like a hymn. "Sometimes, Luca, it's not about machines, it's what's in here," she said, tapping her heart. She pressed the relic cloth into his hand, its rust-brown stain warm, heavy. "Keep this," she said. "From our family's pilgrimage." Luca pocketed it, unsure why it felt like a lifeline, and agreed to visit the church of Santa Maria del Grazie. The town hummed with pilgrims, their prayers a soft tide, rosaries clicking like distant bells. The church's stone walls stood worn but proud, its bell tower catching the morning sun. Inside, incense hung thick, candles flickering before a statue of Padre Pio, his bandaged hands raised, eyes seeming to follow Luca. Sophia led him to a side chapel, a glass case holding relics, a glove, a handkerchief, blood-stained from his stigmata. "He wore those to hide the wounds," Sophia said, her voice low, reverent. "He didn't want fame, but thousands came daily." Luca studied the relics, his scientist's mind noting fabric age, stain authenticity. But another part, quieter, wondered at a man who bore such pain in silence. She pointed to a confessional, its wood worn smooth. He spent hours there, listening to fear's sins. He'd say, "Prayer is the oxygen of the soul." It changed lives. Luca approached, imagining Padre Pio, stigmata bleeding, yet steady, his words. "Humility is the foundation of all virtues." Etched in a pamphlet a friar handed him. The scientist in him saw psychology, coincidence. The man felt Elena's courage, a crack in his heart's wall. "You don't believe, do you?" Sophia asked, her tone curious, not accusing. Luca's fingers brushed the cloth in his pocket, its warmth a pulse. "I believe in data," he said. "And right now it's failing me." Sophia smiled, tilting her head. Padre Pio said, "Faith is to believe what you don't see. Maybe you're carrying a cross you can't measure." Luca's throat tightened. Elena's whispered, "Let go," echoed. He turned away, the church's silence loud with questions, the relic cloth heavy, its stain a map he couldn't yet read. The sun rose over San Giovanni Rotondo, its light soft as a whispered hymn, the hills a quiet witness to faith. The town stirred with the hum of pilgrims, their rosaries clicking like distant chimes, their voices a low tide of prayer. In Maria Esposito's home, the scent of espresso and candle wax wrapped Dr. Luca Rossi like a memory, the warmth of a wood stove pushing back the morning's chill. He sat at the worn oak table, his notebook open, its pages filled with numbers that explained nothing. The relic cloth Maria had given him yesterday, a small square of linen, edges frayed, stained with the rust-brown mark of Padre Pio's stigmata blood, lay beside it, its weight heavier than its size, a map Luca couldn't read. For 2 days, he'd faced the mystery of Padre Pio's body, dead since 1968 yet serene, untouched by decay, defying every law of science he held sacred. The crypt's chill lingered in his bones, and Maria's words from yesterday echoed. "Sometimes, Luca, it's not about machines, it's what's in here." He pushed the thought away, but it clung like the damp air of the crypt, persistent, unyielding. Maria moved through the kitchen with a grace honed by decades, her black shawl draped like a mantle, her silver cross catching the dawn's glow. She set a plate of fresh figs before Luca, her eyes warm but piercing. "You didn't sleep, Luca," she said, not a question but a truth, her voice soft as a prayer. Luca managed a tight smile, tapping his notebook. Too much data to process. But the data was a mockery, X-rays, tissue samples, environmental scans. All yielded no preservatives, no bacteria, no reason for a body to lie as if death had paused to kneel. Maria sat across from him, her hands folded. San Giovanni holds you, Luca. Padre Pio holds you. You carry a cross, don't you? Luca's fingers brushed the relic cloth, his throat tightening. He hadn't spoken Elena's name in years, but her courage, her rosary gleaming as she prayed, her whispered, "Let go" in her final days, rose like a tide, sharp and unhealed. "I should be in Rome by tonight," he said, dodging her gaze, his voice hollow. "The Vatican's tests are done." Maria's smile was patient, eternal. Padre Pio used to say, "Love is the measure of our ability to bear crosses." "You'll stay for Mass, Luca." "For him." Sophia burst into the room, her school bag slung over one shoulder, her dark curls bouncing as she grabbed a figure. Her eyes locked onto Luca, bright with challenge. "Not giving up, are you, Doctor? You didn't solve Padre Pio's mystery." Luca leaned back, his scientist's instinct flaring. "I'm not done looking," he said, but the words lacked their old steel. Sophia grinned, undeterred. "Maybe you're looking wrong," he said. "Prayer is the oxygen of the soul. Ever try it?" The question cut deep, stirring the memory of Elena's faith, her prayers he'd dismissed as futile. Luca's gaze dropped to the cloth, its stain a quiet pulse. "I stick to what I can measure," he said, his voice softer than he meant. Antonio entered from the garage, his broad frame filling the doorway, hands smudged with grease. His face, lined with the pragmatism of a man who fixed what was broken, softened as he spoke. "I stopped praying when my brother died," he said quietly, his eyes distant. "Lung cancer, like your wife, Luca. But Mo's faith, it keeps me hoping. Maybe it'll do something for you." Luca froze, surprised by the mechanic's candor, the shared shadow of loss. He nodded, words failing him, the relic cloth heavy in his pocket. Maria's voice broke the silence, firm yet gentle. "Mass starts soon. Come, Luca." Not as a scientist, but as a man. Luca wanted to refuse, to retreat to his lab, his data, the sterile safety of Rome. But the cloth's warmth, Sophia's challenge, Antonio's quiet hope, Maria's unwavering faith. They pulled him toward the church of Santa Maria del Grazie, like a tide he couldn't resist. The walk was short, the town alive with pilgrims, their prayers a soft hum against the clink of rosaries. The church's stone facade stood resolute, its bell tower catching the morning sun, casting shadows like fleeting truths across the square. Inside, the air was thick with incense, the pews filled with faces etched with devotion, old women clutching beads, young men with bowed heads, a child lighting a candle with trembling hands. Luca followed the Espositos to a pew near the front, the relic cloth a quiet presence in his pocket, its weight both foreign and familiar. The Mass began, the priest's Latin rising in a cadence that felt timeless, weaving a tapestry of reverence through the flickering candlelight. Luca sat stiffly, his scientist's mind noting the rituals, the chalice raised, the host glowing like a star, but his heart stirred, caught in the rhythm of the prayers. Maria leaned close, her voice a whisper over the soft hum of the congregation. "This is where he lived, Luca. Not just in the confessional, but here, with us, in prayer." His stigmata bled, his body ached, but his spirit never broke. He said, "Humility is the foundation of all virtues." He lived it, even when the pain was too much. Luca's eyes drifted to the altar, where a statue of Padre Pio stood, its bandaged hands raised in blessing, eyes seeming to pierce through time. He thought of Elena, her courage in her final days, her smile despite the pain, her whispered, "Let go," as she slipped away. He hadn't let go, not of her, not of his anger, not of the God he'd blamed for her silence. But here, with the Espositos beside him, the air alive with prayer, he felt a crack in that anger, a space where something new might grow. Sophia nudged him, her voice low, pointing to a side chapel where pilgrims knelt before a glass case. "His relics are there, Luca. People say they feel him, like he's still listening." Luca followed her gaze, the scientist in him skeptical, the man curious. After Mass, he approached the chapel, the air thick with wax and whispered vows. The case held a glove, a handkerchief, both stained with the blood of Padre Pio's stigmata, relics of a man who bore Christ's wounds for 50 years. Luca's fingers brushed the cloth in his pocket, its warmth a quiet pulse, and he recalled the pamphlet's words. "Faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward is to see what you believe." The scientist in him wanted to dissect the relics, to test the stains, to reduce the mystery to chemistry. But the man in him, the one who remembered Elena's courage, felt a longing, faint but persistent, like a candle's glow in a darkened room. Back at Maria's home, The table was set with risotto and homemade wine, the clink of forks a soft counterpoint to the morning's reverence. Maria spoke of Padre Pio's miracles, her voice steady as a heartbeat. "My husband, Giovanni, was in a coma," she said, her eyes distant. "Doctors gave up. I prayed to Padre Pio, left a rosary at his shrine. The next day, Giovanni woke. He lived 10 more years, Luca, 10 years of love." Luca wanted to argue, spontaneous recovery, a medical fluke, but Maria's certainty stopped him. Her faith was quiet, like the hills outside, enduring. Antonio, wiping his hands on a napkin, shrugged. "I don't know about miracles. But Mo's strength, it's real. Kept us going after my brother's death." Luca envied that strength, even as he clung to his doubt. Sophia leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "So, Doctor, still think you'll crack the case? Or is Padre Pio winning?" Luca's throat tightened, the relic cloth heavy in his pocket. "I'm still looking," he said, but his voice wavered, Elena's courage lingering like a shadow. That afternoon, Luca returned to the crypt, the stone walls colder now, as if guarding their secret. The friars, under Vatican orders, allowed him a brief visit to confirm his findings. Padre Pio's body lay unchanged, its face serene, hands scarred but whole. Luca ran a single scan, the machines hum a familiar comfort, but the readouts were the same. No decay, no preservatives, no explanation. "What are you telling me?" he whispered, his voice swallowed by the crypt's silence. The relic cloth felt heavier, its stain a reminder of blood shed in faith, in love. He thought of Elena's rosary, Maria's cross, Antonio's loss, Sophia's challenge. A man who saw suffering as a bridge to God. Back at the church, the nave was quieter now, the pilgrims thinning, candles burning low. Luca sat in a pew, the relic cloth in his hand, its stain catching the flickering light. Padre Pio's words echoed. "Prayer is the key to God's heart." Luca closed his eyes, his lips moving silently. "I don't know if you're there," he whispered, "but I'm here." The prayer was raw, halting, a surrender to a mystery he'd spent his life denying. The air felt alive, as if the saint's voice lingered, urging him to release his anger. He thought of Elena, her courage, and for the first time, the weight of his grief felt lighter, like a candle's flame holding steady in the dark. Maria met him at her door, her smile warm, her cross glinting. "You'll return, Luca," she said, a promise, not a question. Sophia hugged him, her voice teasing but kind. "Don't forget him, Doctor." Antonio nodded, his gruff exterior softening. "Maybe pray sometimes, eh?" Luca smiled, a real one, the relic cloth a quiet companion in his pocket. As he stepped into the evening light, the town glowed under a rising moon, its silence a prayer, its streets alive with the echo of a saint whose body defied time. The afternoon sun bathed San Giovanni Rotondo in a golden hush, its light filtering through olive groves, the distant toll of church bells soft as a heartbeat. The town pulsed with pilgrims, their whispered prayers a gentle tide, their rosaries clicking like echoes of faith across the hills. Dr. Luca Rossi walked the narrow streets, the relic cloth in his pocket, a frayed square of linen, stained with the rust-brown mark of Padre Pio's Stigmata blood, a family heirloom from Maria Esposito's pilgrimage, its weight a quiet companion. For 2 days, he'd grappled with the mystery of Padre Pio's body. Dead since 1968, yet untouched by decay, its serene face defying every scientific law he held sacred. The crypt's chill lingered in his bones, Maria's faith, Sophia's questions, and Antonio's quiet hope weaving a thread through his skepticism. That morning's mass had stirred something in him, the priest's Latin, and the host's glow cracking the wall around his heart. Padre Pio's words, "Prayer is the key to God's heart," echoed, a challenge to the scientist who trusted only data, a call to the man who hadn't prayed since Elena's death 5 years ago. Luca's fingers brushed the cloth, its warmth a pulse, and he felt her courage, her rosary gleaming in her final days, her whispered, "Let go unanswered." Stir like a tide he could no longer hold back. Luca returned to the church of Santa Maria del Grazie, drawn by a need he couldn't name, the stone facade resolute under the afternoon light, its bell tower a sentinel against a sky streaked with clouds. The nave was quieter now, the morning's pilgrims thinning, their prayers a soft hum fading into the incense-heavy air. Candles burned low before Padre Pio's statue, its bandaged hands raised, eyes seeming to follow Luca as he sat in a pew near the side chapel. The relic cloth felt heavier, its stain catching the flickering light, and he pulled the pamphlet from his pocket, its pages worn from his touch. He read of Padre Pio's life. Born Francesco Forgione in 1887, a frail child called to the priesthood despite illness, his stigmata appearing in 1918 during a prayer so intense it left him trembling. For 50 years, he bore the wounds of Christ, bleeding daily, yet spent hours in the confessional, offering absolution to the desperate. Faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward is to see what you believe, he'd written, words that resonated with Luca's confusion. A confession from a man who called himself a mystery to myself. Luca's scientist mind wanted to reduce it to psychology, a monk's charisma weaving devotion. But the man in him, haunted by Elena's courage, felt a longing, fragile as a candle's flame, urging him to step beyond the measurable. He approached the side chapel, where a glass case held relics, a glove, a handkerchief, stained with the blood of Padre Pio's stigmata, tokens of a life given to others. Pilgrims knelt nearby, their whispered vows blending with the soft clink of rosaries, their faces alight with a hope Luca envied. A friar passed, his robes brushing the stone floor, and offered a quiet nod, as if sensing Luca's turmoil. Luca's fingers traced the cloth in his pocket, its warmth a silent pulse, and he thought of Maria's story. Her husband's recovery after a coma, a miracle she attributed to Padre Pio's intercession. "He saw our pain and carried it with us," she'd said, her voice steady as the hills. Luca had dismissed it as a fluke, a spontaneous recovery, but the crypt's mystery, Padre Pio's body, serene after 40 years, challenged his certainty. The readouts from his scans, run that morning, were unchanged. No preservatives, no bacteria, no explanation. The crypt, now a shrine under Vatican care, held the saint's restored face in a glass case, a testament beyond science, beyond time. Luca sat again, the pamphlet open, and read another of Padre Pio's teachings. Love God above all, and your neighbor as yourself. The words landed like stones in still water, rippling through his doubt, stirring memories of Elena's smile. Her faith he'd scorned. Luca's mind drifted to the Espositos, their home a beacon in this town of faith. Maria's unwavering belief, Sophia's bold questions, Antonio's gruff hope. They had woven a thread through his skepticism, each pulling him closer to something he couldn't name. Sophia's voice echoed from the morning. Maybe you're carrying a cross you can't measure. Antonio's confession, his brother's death, his own lost faith, mirrored Luca's, a bridge between their losses. Maria's certainty, quiet as the dawn, had held them all, her cross glinting as she spoke of Padre Pio's miracles. Luca thought of the saint's life, detailed in the pamphlet. His hospitals, built to care for the poor. His letters, guiding the broken-hearted. His confessions, where he seemed to read souls, offering words that healed beyond the physical. Pray, hope, and don't worry, Padre Pio had said, a mantra that drew millions to San Giovanni Rotondo, their rosaries adorned with his image, their hearts lifted by his presence. Luca had scoffed at such devotion, but the relic cloth in his pocket, its stain a map of faith, felt like a challenge he could no longer ignore. He stood, the church's silence wrapping him like a cloak, and walked to the confessional where Padre Pio had spent his days. Its wood was worn smooth by years of touch, a testament to the thousands who'd knelt there, bearing their fears. Luca imagined the saint, his hands bleeding, his voice steady, saying, "Humility is the foundation of all virtues." The scientist in Luca saw a man, flawed and human, his miracles perhaps exaggerated by desperate hearts. But the man in him, the one who'd whispered prayers for Elena only to meet silence, felt a stir, a crack in the wall he'd built since her death. He returned to the pew, the relic cloth in his hand, its stain glowing faintly in the candlelight. He closed his eyes, the air alive with the echo of prayers, and whispered, "I don't know if you're there, but I'm here." The prayer was raw, halting, not for answers but for peace, a surrender to a mystery he'd spent his life denying. The church felt alive, as if Padre Pio's voice lingered, urging him to release the anger that had bound him to Elena's loss. Her courage, her whispered, "Let go," rose like a tide, and for the first time, Luca felt the weight of his grief shift, lighter, like a candle holding steady in the dark. He left the church, the afternoon light softening the town's edges, the bells tolling softly as pilgrims moved like a river toward the shrine. Luca returned to Maria's home, the scent of tomato sauce and candle wax greeting him. The Espositos were gathered at the table, their faces warm with the ease of family. Maria met him at the door, her smile a promise, her cross glinting. "You've seen him, Luca," she said, her voice gentle but certain. "Not just his body, but him." Luca nodded, the cloth heavy in his pocket. "I don't understand it," he admitted, his voice soft. Sophia bounded over, her eyes bright. "You don't have to, Doctor." Padre Pio said, "Doubt is a thorn, but it can lead you to God." Maybe you're starting. Luca managed a half-smile, her words cutting through his defenses. Antonio, wiping his hands on a rag, nodded, his gruff exterior softening. I don't pray much, but Mo's right, there's something here. Keep that cloth, Luca. Maybe it'll keep you hoping. Luca clutched the relic, its warmth a quiet anchor, and felt a pang of gratitude for this family. Their faith a light he couldn't yet reach, but no longer rejected. As Luca packed his briefcase, Maria pressed a small prayer card into his hand, Padre Pio's face staring back, his eyes piercing even in ink. You'll return, Luca, she said, not a question but a truth. Sophia hugged him, her voice teasing but kind. Don't forget him, Doctor. Or us. Antonio clapped his shoulder, his grip firm. Safe travels. And maybe pray sometimes, eh? Luca smiled, a real one, the first in years, and stepped into the evening light. The town glowed under a rising moon, its streets alive with the echo of a saint whose presence defied time. In Rome, Luca sat at his desk, the relic cloth beside his laptop, its stain a faint glow in the dim light. He typed his report, his fingers steady. The preservation of Padre Pio's remains is anomalous, with no scientific cause identified. Further study is recommended. The words were clinical, precise, but felt small against the cloth's warmth, the memory of San Giovanni's bells. He didn't call it a miracle, but he didn't need to. The mystery was enough, a door left ajar, a question that no longer demanded an answer. Luca thought of Padre Pio's life, his stigmata bleeding for 50 years, his confessions healing broken souls, his hospitals caring for the poor, his words. Pray, hope, and don't worry, drawing millions to a town where faith felt alive. He thought of Elena's courage, her smile in her final days, and for the first time, he let go, not of her, but of the anger that had chained him to her loss. In the crypt, now a shrine, the saint's restored face lay in a glass case, a testament beyond science, beyond time. Luca lit a candle in his mind, its flame fragile but steady, like peace found in mystery. The hills of San Giovanni whispered in his memory, their silence a prayer, their light a promise that some mysteries were meant to endure. Did you enjoy this story? Here are some facts supporting the claims of miracles surrounding Padre Pio. The following points summarize documented or widely attested phenomena associated with Padre Pio, focusing on those with historical credibility, such as medical testimony, church investigations, or multiple eyewitness accounts that support claims of miracles. The Stigmata. From 1918 to 1968, Padre Pio bore wounds on his hands, feet, and side, resembling Christ's crucifixion wounds, for 50 years. Medical examinations, e.g., Dr. Giorgio Festa, 1925, Dr. Odoardo Linoli, 1970, confirmed that the wounds bled real blood daily, produced no infection, and emitted a rose-like scent. The wounds were not self-inflicted, as alleged by skeptics, and healed completely at death without scars, as noted by Dr. Guglielmo Sanguinetti in 1968. Church investigations, including Vatican scrutiny in the 1920s, found no fraud, supporting claims of supernatural origin. Numerous healings were attributed to Padre Pio's intercession, with 2 officially recognized by the Vatican for his canonization in 2002. The first involved Matteo Colella, a 7-year-old boy who recovered from meningitis-induced organ failure in 2000 after his mother prayed to Padre Pio, with no medical explanation. The second was Consiglia de Martino's recovery from a ruptured thoracic duct in 1995, deemed inexplicable by Vatican medical panels. Thousands of other reported healings are documented at the Cosa Sollievo della Sofferenza Hospital. Credible accounts, including those from clergy and laypeople, claim Padre Pio appeared in 2 places simultaneously. A notable case involved Monsignor Fernando Damiani, who reported seeing Padre Pio in Uruguay in 1950, despite being physically present in San Giovanni Rotondo at the time, a claim confirmed by multiple witnesses. Padre Pio was renowned for discerning penitents' sins before they spoke, as documented in letters and testimonies collected by the Capuchin order. For example, a 1940s account describes him confronting a man with unconfessed sins, prompting immediate repentance. This phenomenon, observed by hundreds during his 12-hour confessions, was cited in his beatification as evidence of supernatural insight. During the March 3, 2008 exhumation, biochemist Nazzareno Gabrielli noted an absolute absence of bad odors, despite the body's 40 years in a humid wooden coffin. This was unexpected, as decomposition typically produces strong odors. At Padre Pio's death on September 23, 1968, his stigmata wounds, which bled daily for 50 years, vanished completely, leaving smooth, unscarred skin. Dr. Sanguinetti, present at the deathbed, described the skin as like that of a newborn, a phenomenon noted again during the 2008 exhumation, with no medical explanation for such healing. During his lifetime, Padre Pio's stigmata and personal items, including bandages, were reported to emit a rose-like fragrance, as testified by medical examiners and devotees. This scent persisted in some relics, and was cited in canonization proceedings as a sign of holiness. Do you have any other stories about Padre Pio? Share below, and join Faith and Family Fables with a like and subscribe.